In this series, lowimpact.org talks with people working to build a mutually owned, democratic, decentralised economy that builds community and doesn't destroy nature. We want to increase collaboration to bring about system change. Find links to the sites mentioned in the videos in the description below. Join the conversation by liking, commenting and subscribing to our channel.
So I'd like to introduce Dil Green. He's a member of the Low Impact Co-op, and I was introduced to you, Dil, by Matthew Slater of the Credit Commons. You had an idea earlier this year that's culminated in my getting a book deal. So I have to write that.
All my doing.
I have to write that book now. I can write the bulk of it myself, but there's a lot of specialist knowledge I need to extract from people to translate it for a bigger audience. And to slot into the book. It's apt, I think, to start those interviews with you because it's your idea about mutual credit clubs that's got me to this position. I'll put links below to background information about mutual credit. It's a moneyless trading system, but we've been talking about it on Low Impact for a while now. The position is that humanity is on a very destructive path, which will be impossible to get off as long as we have this money system. Hello, Dil.
Hello, Dave.
So I'm going to ask you some questions that I'm typically asked. Not all of them, just the sensible ones. I'd like to make sure that the answers make sense to complete beginners. So I want to break it down and simplify. So very briefly, if you can. So why are you doing this?
It's the thing that I feel I can do and make some difference in, which seems to have the potential to contribute most deeply to sorting out the mess we're in. There's all sorts of things that all sorts of people are doing, and we need all of them. And I don't knock anybody else's choices about what they're doing, just wish them good luck, and that's fine. But it seems very, very strongly to me that just for reasons of historical accident, it's not a conspiracy or anything, the sort of money we use drives extractive behavior and drives excessive competitive behavior and discourages and disincentivizes collaborative behavior. And changing that might do an awful lot to make a lot of good ideas work better that other people are doing.
Right. So we worked on the Open Credit Network together, which is a national mutual credit network for the UK. Why did you switch to the mutual credit clubs idea?
Essentially, mutual credit is what I describe as, it works by operationalized trust. In other words, it takes trust that exists or can be developed between trading partners, and it turns that into something real. In other words, more access to credit. And the problem with the Open Credit Network, lovely as it is, and it was a great step forward for us in getting launched, is that because it's a national network of individual businesses, the ability to generate trust is relatively low. The businesses don't know each other, they weren't already in trading relationships, and they're all over the country. So they don't really know how to trust each other terribly well. So what we we're looking for with the mutual credit clubs idea is ways of having smaller groups of trading partners, maybe only as few as 10 or 12 or something like that, where the trust could be strong, and so their ability to offer each other credit could be strong. But that could also be connected together with other groups, because
I'm coming to that. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So mutual credit clubs, groups of businesses that trade together in mutual credit. that can be federated into wider networks that can encompass the globe. Very exciting and very useful in post-COVID times when there's not going to be much money about. So people get to hear about it, or they read the book and they think, great, how can I join in? What can they do? How can they join in? When?
The key thing that is hard to understand, took me a long time to figure out, is that in the West particularly, individuals are not allowed to create value. Now, economic value, of course, individuals create all the value there is, but we're only really permitted to create economic value in the context of some business entity. This is a great sort of takeover of human endeavor in capitalism, is that individuals no longer have the means of production, to quote or misquote Marx. Things work differently still in the developing world. Many people are in business on their own account and they don't need any institutional structure. But even people who think that they're individual creatives in developed economies, like writers or actors or whatever, they actually have to engage with businesses in order to be able to create economic value out of the human value that they create with their work. So essentially, to join in, you have to be part of something, and that something has to join in the West. And so we're starting with business to business networks, but that is drawing the line of business as widely as possible to include social enterprises and
sole traders.
Sole traders and charities and productive community groups. So an allotment association could, if it wanted to, form a club and trade.
So where are we with the tech? What will, if you have somebody who says, right, I've got a group of businesses, or I'm a business network, or I'm an accountant and I have a group of clients, or a local authority, and they want a mutual credit club in their local authority. Where are we with the tech? What will the package that network conveners get look like, and when can they have it, and what's required to make it happen?
There's a fair bit of work to be done to have something that works, as it were, out of the box. However, what we have got is the most complex, most innovative aspect of it done, which is the definition and the operations of the heart of any club, which is the ledger, as in, the big book in which all the trades are written down, the digital version of that. Every club is a standalone mutual organization owned by its members that runs its own internal account system. Each ledger can then federate to another ledger, but it doesn't belong to that ledger. It just is able to send messages about trades to it, and that ledger keeps its own, that network keeps its own ledger, and the ledgers aren't linked, they're just connected by messages. I want to send 100 to so-and-so, that's a message, and then both ledgers update their accounts. So we've got that software, which is innovative and needed to be proved up and running in a reference implementation, and that's open source, and that's great. What then matters for each club is how they actually send those messages, and that's going to be different in different contexts. We have a very basic like banking app front end that we are using internally, and that can be developed, but we are essentially in development of various funded contexts where we will produce workable, usable interfaces to that ledger software that make sense in different contexts. So for businesses, the best bet is probably to integrate it with their existing accounting packages, so that there's actually nothing that they see. It's just like another bank on their system.
Right. It's a rough idea. When will this be ready for clubs to have and to get going?
that I mean, you could start now. We could do it for you if it was a good enough prospect, and we wouldn't need any new software at all. That's what we'll be doing with the first few projects. It will never be done. It'll always be a process. But I would say in 8 months or so, we should be in a much less hand wavy position than we are at the moment.
So when the book comes out, which is hopefully next autumn, there's going to be some projects to point at, hopefully.
We're working like stink to make that be the case.
And right now, if there's somebody who is part of a business network or thinks they can get together a business network, or they're part of a local authority, or they're an accountant, what should they do? Should they just contact Mutual Credit Services through the website?
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I mean, the stark truth is that at the moment our capacities aren't enormous, and we need to focus on key projects that we can see have a really strong chance of building a working model, because that's what we need to be able to point at to get more funds, whether that's by investment or grants. We need to be able to start showing people how this really works. And as I say, we're making great strides, and we are in a couple of contexts where we're building that at the moment.
Okay, I'll come back to that in a minute. So it's relatively easy to explain to people how you can trade in mutual credit. I've explained to my friend's 7-year-old son, and he got it. But how do they save? So probably the most common question I'm asked is, if we had a mutual credit world, how would I buy a house?
So the answer to that question is, we're never going to have a mutual credit world in the way that you might say we've got a hard currency world at the moment. The hard currencies we use them for absolutely every economic purpose, or we think we do. In fact, what we do is we measure all sorts of economic tools in hard currency. So pensions don't work like hard currency. Corn futures don't work like hard currency, but we measure them all in hard currency. The whole point of mutual credit is that the analysis that came up with it, which we didn't do, realizes that if you use one type of money for measuring everything, and one of the functions of that money is savings, which technically is called store of value, then there's a real problem with money supply, because people keep on saving it. They keep on using it as a store of value, piling up pounds and pounds of pounds or dollars, because they need security in old age, or they need to make a large investment, or they need insurance against risk.
Yeah.
And those are all very important things that we need in society. But if you use one money system to do that, to do everything, then part of it is that. But the other part of money is that it should flow like liquid. It should pass between people as fast as possible, because that's incentivizes value creation. So mutual credit is deliberately not the best store of value currency. It's designed not to be worth holding. So if you want to save it won't be a mutual credit world. It will be a mutual credit, and we believe use credit world. And use credits are different than mutual credit. Use credits are like vouchers for particular services, and the key ones will be things like energy, rent, food. Those sort of things will be how you save, because if you've got rent credits piled up, then you don't need to worry about somewhere safe to live.
Right, so this is Chris Cook's thing, isn't it? So I'm going to interview Chris Cook later on, so I'll talk to Chris Cook all about that. Okay.
So it is really worth reading a blog, which I think is on Low Impact, been reblogged there, called 2 Planks and a Bridge, because that describes very simply the way that these two mechanisms can work together to cover what we expect.
Okay. It hasn't been reblogged on Low Impact, but I'll make sure it is. I'll reblog that soon.
Right, look out for that one, folks.
The second most common question I'm asked is, what if somebody defaults and does a runner?
So these are relatively small groups. Number one, the rules of membership say you can't leave if you've got a negative account. So you will be pursued by legal mechanisms. So that's just the same as if someone defaults at the moment. But people will default. People will go bust, through no fault of their own.
And die.
People will die through possibly no fault of their own, or possibly their own fault, but it doesn't really make any difference. So there's two things to note. If I'm a business and I issue an invoice to Dave and I give him 30 days to pay, that's credit right there. So mutual credit isn't really any different than that, except that what we do is we pool the credit within the group. But if I do it in a standard way, so I issue an invoice to Dave and he gets run over by a bus and his business folds, I never get paid. That's it. It's just money. It's just lost. I delivered whatever I delivered for Dave and I never got any money. If Dave and I were part of a mutual credit club, he would have paid me immediately. That's part of the deal. You just by the issuing and acceptance of the invoice, you've incurred that mutual credit payment.
So your account would just get that credit immediately.
Yeah. So I would have the 1,000, let's say, mutual credit units. And then Dave unfortunately gets run over by a bus and ceases to trade. Or from this.
I'm not liking this story very much.
Well, just don't go out. So where was it? Yeah. So Dave ceases to trade, and at least you're not morally culpable. You see, I could have said you were a crook, but
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I'd rather die than be a crook. That's right. Okay.
But it's not a dead loss. I've still got 1,000 mutual credit units in my account, and there's still, say, 100 other members of the club who accept those credits. So the default doesn't fall heavily on any individual. That's the number one to see. Right. So we have lost as a group. We've lost Dave as a trading partner, effectively. That's the most serious loss. But we haven't lost anybody sharply individually. So those are basically the two stories. The third one is if that person defaults and the mutual credit economy means anything, they need to join another club. And clubs will ask questions of new members, sort of, oh, right, okay, so you're from, Brixton and you were in the Brixton Trading Club, and we phoned them up and it seems like you left and you didn't pay your bills. So I don't know why we should have you as a member. What do you reckon?
So we're not having you as a member because you're, yeah. So the third most common question I'm asked is something along the lines of, I'm not a sole trader and I'm not part of a small business. I work for a large company. Can I still join in? If the company I work for joins, can they pay their staff in mutual credit?
We know that Sardex in Sardinia, which is the most sort of exciting, vibrant example of a mutual credit, recently founded mutual credit, have introduced in, I think, the last 3 years, a business to employee trading mechanism, which is basically very well, and it is very attractive. So basically the deal is that somehow, instead of some of their wages, an employee receives credit to trade across the network using their employer's account. So they get their employer's credit rating, which is presumably bigger than theirs, and the amount that they trade somehow is deducted from their wages. The practical way of doing it, probably because PAYE and everything's huge, is that everybody gets paid their wages perfectly normally, and then they, as it were, buy back credits to trade in mutual credit. That's the most likely.
So it is doable.
It's absolutely doable. If we do it the way I just said, there's no regulatory or legislation that we need to worry about, because wages happens entirely in the pounds economy. And we think that employers probably will offer a discount as well. They'll say, well, yeah, if you give me £1, I'll give you, £1.05 credit to spend in the network, because that'll be good value for them.
Yeah. So can you see a route to getting to, how can I call them, new economy players, for example, community energy groups, community supported agriculture groups, housing co-ops, worker co-ops, credit unions, a route to them trading in mutual credit? How would we get there?
The same benefits of essentially risk reduction and over time access to better credit applies to any trading entity, whether they call themselves a social enterprise or a co-op or a rapacious capitalist organization. It makes just as much sense for anyone to join. What matters for any organization wanting to join is its reciprocal trading relationships. Western economies are very, very vertical. Businesses buy from bigger businesses and sell to smaller businesses, and eventually you get the corner shop selling to an individual, and that's being massively aggregated. COVID's just helped that. You get businesses actually becoming a total internal supply chain and selling direct to consumers. So the scope for intertrading is gradually being reduced in the economy as a whole, and this is why it's so risky, why we keep on having economic crashes one after another, because the economy is basically unstable because it hasn't got enough variety in it. So it's difficult to find businesses that have a relatively high proportion of their trade carried out as intertrade with other businesses. But we've got some hot off the press, actually, some really high quality, mathematically rigorous analytics, which shows that actually the benefits are real. And we're going to be investigating what proportion of trade counts as intertrade that makes that really sing. So that's fantastically useful.
How does the Mutual Credit Club's idea, as it starts to federate and grow, how does it dovetail with what Matthew's doing with the Credit Commons? I'll interview Matthew next to get his perspective, but how do you see it dovetailing and meshing with his Credit Commons idea?
Essentially, as far as I know, we're the only project in the world that is implementing those ideas, and it's pretty pure what we're implementing in terms of the existing public and open source work that Credit Commons has produced, Matthew's produced, and me as well. What we're doing is providing the layer on top of the very technical specification of the Credit Commons that makes it easy for ordinary businesses to use and to understand. And we're working really hard to continually make it less and less about weird conversations about money or strange ways of arranging what you're used to, and making it look totally like what you're used to, just with a different payment gateway.
Yeah, it has to be really easy, doesn't it?
It's just like using PayPal instead of a banking app. That's what we're aiming for. Yeah. And you just look for a business that says we're part of the mutual credit world, and you can pay using that. It's just like, has it got a, what we're aiming for is you look for whether it's got PayPal on the payment page or not. And if you can see PayPal and you like PayPal better than using your bank, you choose PayPal. Yeah. And we would like people to be choosing mutual credit.
So I can see how an accountant or a local authority could convene a club. Who else might be able to?
Business network organizers of all kinds. There's loads and loads and loads of business networks all over the country, ranging from, very straightforward, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, American franchise things where it's all sort of sell, and how many introductions and referrals have you made this month, and score charts and everything, to friendly Rotary clubs that meet in the pub, to solidarity groups among businesses in disadvantaged communities of one sort or another that know that they need to help each other, to campaigning business type groups which want to promote certain sorts of business, with the co-op as the biggest version of those, but all sorts. Yeah, I mean, any sort of group of value producing organizations that do a certain amount of trade together, doesn't need to be a high proportion, who want to work more collaboratively, want to get some benefit in terms of their trading position in respect to the wider world from being able to show that collaboration. Mutual assurance is the word for that. Yeah.
And so what about an individual who thinks, I'd like to get together and form a new network in my town? Would it work for them?
Individuals trading with each other is...
No, I mean an individual to bring together a group of businesses and sole traders in their town.
Right. Well, that's a great thing if someone can do it. It's pretty hard to do unless you're already well connected. If you're already well connected, then you're a convener. If you're trying to do that sort of cold calling businesses, then that's fantastic work, but it probably will be hard work, and you might be better off finding a few other people to work with before working on that. As time goes by, we will be producing more and more material and toolkits, but we haven't got any of those yet. But they are on the stocks, as it were.
Okay. So do you think it can all be done without brokering? So, for example, Sardex, you mentioned earlier, they have a lot of paid brokers. Do you think these will be needed for small networks of businesses that already trade with each other and they may not have much hard cash post-COVID?
Sardex is really interesting. It's the model we use for the Open Credit Network. In other words, there's just one big network. There are no sub-networks. There's no small groups of businesses that know each other. Everybody just gets in the big pool. And it's a big pool, even though it's only Sardinia, which is a small island, small populations. There's 4,000 businesses in the Sardex network. And it's true. The only way that Sardex have been able to keep trade volumes up there is by employing brokers who are on the phone all the time saying, do you know that so-and-so sells this? They've got a deal on, or whatever it is. And that has meant that Sardex has a real break on its ability to develop because it's very expensive. What we're hoping is that if the structure that emerges, and it will be an emergent structure because it will be groups of businesses that decide to join, is of relatively small groups that are already in relationships with each other. They won't need brokers to trade with each other.
Because they already do.
And they will see straightforward financial benefits, improvements to cash flow, reductions in risk, at least, and then over time in increases in access to free credit or interest-free credit, increase over time. So they'll want, on the basis of how much trade they do internally, so they'll want to do more. Whether when those networks aggregate together in networks of networks, so there might be a regional network with a lot of clubs of between 10 and 100 businesses in them, let's say, whether it's obvious enough that it's beneficial to trade across that network, so that you'd make a bit of extra effort to make sure that you searched for businesses in the network preferentially. Whether that means we don't need any brokers at all, remains to be seen. The best idea that we've got is that there will be people who are not paid, but freelance brokers, so that there might be a whole market for referrals, people bringing people together.
So we just have to wait and see, I guess, and see what happens.
Yeah.
So what successes have you had so far?
Okay, well, the biggest obvious one is that working together with a brilliant local food partnership called Food Plymouth and some local food business consultants who have worked with the Open Food Network, which is another fantastic organization. So we put together Mutual Credit Services, those consultants and Food Plymouth put together a bid to Innovate UK, which is basically government money, with the proposition of building a new model for local food business aggregation. So basically sort of something next step along, hopefully, from local box schemes. And we got funded to do an R&D project on that, which is already started and should be finished in April or maybe May next year. And that has mutual credit built in at the core as a key plank of increasing the margins, increasing the benefits of participation for all the small businesses that need to come together to make a local food network work. So that's the most obvious thing. Assessors who don't care about new economy stuff from the government read our proposition and said, yeah, this is worth punting the government's money on. So we're very happy with that. We are also working with some accountants who are interested in the project, and we've been talking to them rather, abstractly about what it would take, and eventually one of them sort of said, so this is all great, but when can we have one? So that was a real positive. We just thought, oh, that's good. They just want to have one, then we don't need to talk about it so much. They want to design it in process. We've got a group of community businesses, really dynamic, interesting people that we're talking to in Brixton, and Lambeth also are very keen to have a project in Lambeth. And we're just starting a parallel conversation with a fantastic group of businesses in the East End of London called the East End Trades Guild. There's about 300 businesses, and they are a great network that covers a lot of fairly straightforward, traditional, local small businesses, and some people with real vision about how to move cooperative and collaborative economy forward. And they're very interested in the idea of building a trade credit club, which is this sort of very simple description of mutual credit for business groups in the East End. So that's where we're active most at the moment.
Great. So I've talked with people from Chelsea Green, who are the publisher of my book. They're a big co-op, not exactly a co-op, an employee-owned business. So they're part of this new economy that we're talking about. And I've talked to them about having a mutual credit account. They said they talked with their colleagues about it. Yeah. So I'd like to walk the walk, and for people to be able to buy the book with mutual credit. Not sure how that would work though with a big international publishing house. How would that work?
That's very interesting. I would have to go think about that. I mean, it raises all sorts of interesting problems. So if Chelsea Green, who presumably can't afford to just sort of give books away, take mutual credit units in payment for the books, then they need to know that they can spend them.
Well, they can pay some of my fee. They can pay my fee in mutual credit, or at least some of it.
They can pay your fee in mutual credit. Okay, that might be enough to
start with, yeah.
But then, where are you going to spend it? Where's the super yacht salesman that will take mutual credit, Dave?
Well, my accountant takes mutual credit, and has taken mutual credit through the Open Credit Network. So that's one
Well,
thing.
hopefully your fee for the book will be larger than your accountant's bill.
Yeah, hopefully.
So, but what you see is the question one always needs to ask about any participant in a mutual credit economy is the other side. So if we look at the people paying for your book in mutual credit, so where are they then going to earn some mutual credit to bring their account back?
Yes, they go around in loops,
balance. So those questions need thoughtful answers. There's a long history of mutual credit startups that operated on the build it and they will come mentality. It's just like, oh, we don't really know how this is going to pan out, but if we make a lot of fuss and make it really cute and interesting and enough people join, then it'll all sort itself out. And the sad reality is it doesn't, because those questions really matter. People who earn a lot think at the beginning, they think, oh, look, my account's got a healthy positive. And we're used to thinking that a healthy positive in your account is great. But it's only great because you can spend it when you need to. And if they look around the network and wonder what they can spend with their 10,000 credits, and they can't find anything that they want, or they can't find anyone who, when they phone them up, will actually accept credits, because that's also possible, then they quickly begin to be grumpy. They say, well, I might have 10,000 of these made up mutual credit units that you told me were so wonderful, but no one will accept them. So they're useless. Or if people go minus a lot and they can't earn and they are not allowed to spend anymore because there are credit limits, soft or hard, eventually you come to a limit. People won't trade with you because they just look at your account, or there's actually a real system limit and it just says bank won't do your trade. Then people want to earn, and if they can't find anyone who will pay them for the things that they're willing to provide, then they get angry, upset, or just disaffected and walk away, which is often what happens. And it's worth anyone who's interested in experiencing this going and joining Simbi.com, which you can join for free, which is a global mutual credit network. It's got a beautiful app, thousands of users. They give you some free credits to start with. It's all free, and just seeing what it's like to be in a build it and they will come network, because although everything about it is great, it just has this sort of flabby, unreal feeling to it. So we believe very much in not building networks for places and groups that we can't predict will get some fairly immediate concrete payback for their commitment.
So last question, would a credit commons, a mutual credit economy, have to grow forever like the current economy does? Could it stabilize so that we could live without destroying nature?
There's really, really good precedent on this. There's a lot of let schemes which operate basically mutual credit just exactly as we do it, just use different words, but the underlying mechanism is the same. Lots of let schemes which started up as long ago as the 90s, and they still survive, and those networks actually don't want to grow. They've become groups of 20, 25 people. They are acquaintances or they're friends, and the experience is it's quite hard to join those groups because actually some of them have stopped bothering to even keep account. They just do stuff for each other. The whole point of mutual credit is that it emphasizes the value exchange. I got this. I needed a book. I wanted to read Dave's book. Over the number, oh, it costs $7. And the value exchange is really what matters. That's where value is in what humans want. So, I mean, there's a sort of theory of exchange is that, well, if the amount of money didn't change in the system as a result of the exchange, then no value was created. But that's obviously nonsense, because why would people bother to go to the effort of a trade if they didn't both feel better off at the end of it? So there's always value created in a trade, but it's not value in numbers of units. It's value, it's human value. Mm-hmm. And so what we hope and assume is, but we've got this precedent, is that yes, mutual credit will not have an inbuilt growth imperative like the money we use at the moment does, because of the fact that people take it out of circulation to do savings, and because of the fact that the banks always create it as interest-bearing debt. So people have got to go and do work before they can clear their account. Yeah.
All right, thanks ever so much then, Dil. So any questions for Dil, you can post them in the YouTube channel or underneath the blog article. I'll blog your 2 planks in a bridge article soon, Dil. And this is the first of a series of articles accompanying the book. So if you want to follow the rest of the series, please subscribe to the channel below or subscribe to our blog on Low Impact. And thanks ever so much for kicking this off, Dil.
Didn't quite keep to half an hour, and I also
didn't quite keep to half an hour, which was not surprising.
We talked fast, so I think that's probably an hour's worth of content there. So so please do, if I said anything too fast, in jargon, whatever, please do ask, and I'll when I get the chance try and explain more fully. But that's great. Thanks, Dave.
Lovely. Cheers, Dil. I'll speak to you later.
Take care. See you.
Bye.
Bye now.